Hi, my name is Natalie, and I'm 28 years old. For most of my life, I believed that if I worked hard, stayed disciplined, and followed the rules, things would fall into place. That belief kept me grounded through years of early mornings, late nights, and sacrifices. I thought I had my life figured out. I had just been promoted in my job as a budget analyst in downtown Denver, and I had finally saved up $20,000, the down payment I needed for my first home. That dream had kept me focused and motivated, especially during the days when I felt alone and overlooked, even by my own family. But nothing could have prepared me for the betrayal that would come, not from strangers, but from those closest to me. I grew up in a middle-class suburb just outside of Denver, Colorado, in a household that, on the surface, seemed like any other. My dad, Thomas, was the principal at a local high school, and my mom, Susan, ran a small but beloved bakery downtown. We lived in a well-kept house on Sycamore Lane with green shutters, trimmed hedges, and a front porch swing that creaked in the wind. It looked picture-perfect from the outside. Inside, though, was a dynamic that I would later realize had shaped almost everything about me. From as early as I can remember, there was a clear line drawn between me and my younger brother, Josh. He was 4 years younger than me, charming, impulsive, and endlessly adored. Josh was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, while I was the responsible one. I followed the rules, did my homework, helped clean the dishes, and tried to make my parents proud. Josh, on the other hand, had tantrums that were dismissed as sensitive episodes. Every time he made a mistake or caused a scene, my mom would brush it off with a smile. "Josh just feels things more deeply," she would say, like that somehow justified everything. I remember one Christmas, when I was 12 and Josh was 8. I had spent weeks saving my allowance to buy real presents for Mom and Dad, a leather wallet for Dad, and a silver locket for Mom. I had wrapped them carefully and placed them under the tree, glowing with pride that I could finally give them something meaningful. Josh had forgotten all about presents until Christmas Eve. He scribbled a couple of cards with crayons and folded them into jagged rectangles. On Christmas morning, they opened my gifts, thanked me with polite smiles, then absolutely raved over Josh's cards. "Look how creative he is," Dad beamed, proudly displaying Josh's work on the mantel. My gifts were pushed aside on the coffee table, barely acknowledged. That was the first time I truly felt it, this ache of invisibility. But I swallowed it and smiled. That's what I always did. I told myself to be the bigger person. And that pattern continued for years. Josh got into fights at school and cried his way out of consequences. I got straight A's and barely got a nod of recognition. When I was 16, I caught Josh stealing $30 from my purse. I confronted him in front of our parents. He cried and said he needed it for a school project but was too scared to ask. My mother wrapped her arms around him and said, "Why are you making such a big deal about this, Natalie?" He said he's sorry. That money was never returned. No punishment. No lecture. Just a hug for Josh and a sharp glance in my direction for overreacting. By the time I finished high school, I had already learned that I couldn't depend on fairness within my family. I would have to build my life on my own terms. I put myself through college at the University of Colorado, working part-time jobs to pay my tuition. I chose a major in finance, driven by a hunger for stability and control over my future. I graduated with honors and a 3.9 GPA, having barely slept through most of my senior year. Meanwhile, Josh was in and out of 2 community colleges, never sticking with anything long enough to finish. And yet, my parents continued to fund his every whim. "Josh just hasn't found his passion yet," Mom would say to relatives who asked. "He's still figuring things out." I tried to block it out, focus on my own path. I landed a job as a junior budget analyst with a firm in downtown Denver. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill, nothing fancy, but it was mine. My weekends were filled with spreadsheets, freelance work, and budgeting. I limited my expenses, cooked at home, and rarely bought anything beyond essentials. Every spare dollar went into my savings account. My goal was to reach $20,000 in 3 years, and I was right on track. I allowed myself only 2 luxuries, a monthly dinner with my best friend Erin, and a latte from my favorite cafe on Sunday mornings. Despite everything, I still went to my parents' house most Sundays. We'd have dinner together, and I'd make small talk with Mom while Dad watched the news. Josh, at 25, still lived at home. He worked part-time at a local music store, but only when he felt like it. My parents still paid for his phone bill, his car insurance, and gave him spending money. I tried to ignore the imbalance, to not let it get under my skin, but sometimes I'd lie awake at night wondering how long they'd keep enabling him. "Your brother is just taking a little longer to find his way," Mom would say. "Not everyone is as driven as you, Natalie." I knew better than to argue. I'd learned that lesson long ago. 3 months ago, something happened that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, my efforts were finally being recognized. I received a promotion at work. I was now the youngest senior budget analyst in my department. Along with a new title came a substantial raise and an invitation to attend a prestigious week-long financial strategies conference in San Francisco. It was the kind of opportunity one had dreamed of for years. My supervisor told me I was being seen as a rising star in the company. I was overjoyed, and for once, I let myself celebrate. The Sunday before my trip, I went to my parents' house for dinner, as usual. Aaron had taken me shopping the day before to pick up a new blazer, and we laughed over coffee about me finally splurging a little. At the dinner table, I shared my excitement with my family, telling them about the conference schedule, the hotel near the bay, and how I had tacked on a couple of extra days to explore the city. Everyone smiled and nodded, but Josh's reaction stood out. He seemed unusually interested. "So, you're gonna be gone the whole week?" he asked while shoveling more lasagna onto his plate.
"Yep.
"I leave Tuesday morning and get back late Sunday night," I replied, taking a sip of iced tea. He tilted his head. "You staying at one of those fancy places?" "Yeah, the conference booked us at a hotel right near the waterfront. It's gorgeous." Josh smiled in a way that made me pause. At the time, I took it as a rare moment of sibling support. He even said, "That's awesome. You totally deserve a break." I smiled back, foolishly believing that we were finally connecting. But in hindsight, I realized now he wasn't appreciating my hard work. He was calculating how many days I would be away. And I had no idea that a simple detail from years earlier would come back to haunt me. You see, when I first moved into my apartment, I had left a few personal items in my old desk at my parents' house, including an emergency debit card linked to my main savings account. I kept it there as a backup, thinking it was safer than carrying both cards with me. I rarely used it, and I never mentioned it to anyone. It was a quiet security net, one I forgot even existed most of the time. But apparently, Josh didn't forget. He had known it was there. And he knew I wouldn't be back for 7 whole days. The week in San Francisco was amazing. I soaked in every session, networked with leaders in my field, and walked away with a notebook full of ideas. On my personal days, I walked across the Golden Gate Bridge, tasted wine in Napa Valley, and took more selfies than I'd admit. I returned to Denver late Sunday night, exhausted but glowing with pride. It was the first time in years I felt like I was building something mine. Monday morning, I woke up, made my usual coffee, and opened my banking app like I always did to track my finances. The moment I saw the number, my hands started shaking. My savings account, which should have had exactly $20,000, showed a balance of $0. At first, I thought it was a glitch, a system error, something temporary. But when I clicked into the transaction history, reality hit me like a brick wall. There were 5 separate ATM withdrawals, each for $3,000, made over 5 consecutive days. And then one final transaction of $5,000, all made from ATMs located in the Denver area. Each one had cleared. No flags. No holds. The ATM locations were all within a few miles of my parents' house. My mind raced. Who could have gotten access? I had my regular card with me. I hadn't shared my PIN. Then it hit me, the emergency card in the desk drawer. I called my bank's fraud department, heart pounding. The woman on the phone was polite, efficient, and concerned. "Yes, Ms. Natalie. I see the transactions here," she confirmed. "But they were all made using your debit card and your correct PIN. We can certainly open a fraud investigation, but since the card was physically present during the withdrawals, We would need a police report before we can proceed further. A police report. The words echoed in my mind. I ended the call, my coffee cold beside me, and sat in stunned silence. There was no question in my mind who had done it, but I needed to see it for myself. I needed to hear it from him. I called work and told them I was taking a personal day, something I had never done lightly. Then I got in my car and drove straight to my parents' house. It was just after 9:30 a.m. I knew Dad would be at school, and Mom would already be at the bakery. That left one person likely to be home, Josh. Sure enough, he opened the door wearing pajama pants and a brand new hoodie that looked far too expensive for someone with no full-time job. His hair was freshly styled, his nails trimmed, and his expression dropped the moment he saw me. "Natalie? What are you doing here?" he asked, surprised. "I thought you were coming over for dinner on Sunday." I didn't answer. I stepped past him into the living room, fury bubbling just beneath the surface. I pulled up my phone and opened my bank statement. "Where is it, Josh?" I said, my voice shaking. He blinked. "Where's what?" "My money," I snapped, turning the screen toward him. "The $20,000 you stole while I was out of town." His eyes darted away. For a split second, he looked like he might deny it. Then he sighed and slumped down on the couch, rubbing his face. I was gonna pay you back," he mumbled. I felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. "With what? You barely even work." "I just needed a break," he said, voice cracking. "I've been so down lately, and everyone's always comparing me to you. You've got it all figured out, your job, your savings, your life, and I'm just the screw-up. I wanted to feel good for once. Just for a little while." "You took everything," I said, my voice hardening. "That was my future. My home. My security." Josh looked up at me with watery eyes. "I didn't think you'd miss it right away." Those words. That sentence. It snapped something in me I didn't know was still intact. He hadn't just stolen my money. He had calculated how long I'd be gone, waited for me to leave, and then deliberately emptied my account while pretending to smile across the dinner table. And the worst part was, I knew exactly what was coming next, because I had lived it my whole life. As if on cue, the front door opened. I heard the familiar shuffle of my mother's footsteps and my father's voice greeting her. They were both home earlier than expected. When they saw me standing in the living room with Josh slumped on the couch and my face flushed with anger, they froze. "Natalie," my mother said, setting her purse down slowly. "Honey, what's going on?" I didn't hesitate. I turned to face them, holding my phone up like a piece of evidence. Josh stole my emergency debit card from the desk upstairs and withdrew every last cent of my savings while I was in San Francisco. $20,000. It's all gone. My dad's face tightened. "That's a serious accusation." "It's not an accusation," I snapped. "It's a fact. The transactions were made at ATMs in this area while I was across the country. And he admitted it just now." My mother turned to Josh, who was now holding his head in his hands. "Is this true?" she asked softly. Josh nodded, tears starting to fall again. "I was going to pay her back. I've been feeling really low, and I thought maybe this would help me feel normal again." What happened next was not shock, not outrage. It was a sight I'd seen 1,000 times in 1,000 different forms. My mom walked over to him, sat beside him on the couch, and wrapped her arm around him like he was the victim. "Oh, sweetheart," she murmured. "You should have told us you were struggling." I stood there, stunned. My mouth opened, but no words came out. I turned to my dad, hoping, praying that he would say something, anything that made sense. But he just looked at me and said, "Natalie, your brother is clearly going through something. We need to be understanding right now." "Understanding," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "He stole from me $20,000. That was everything I had been saving. For years." "You have a good job," Dad said, his tone oddly calm, as if that excused it. "You can recover." And just like that, I realized nothing had changed. I had worked myself to the bone for 3 years. I had given up vacations, dinners out, new clothes, just to reach my goal. And now that it was gone, the people who should have been furious on my behalf were comforting the person who took it from me. What did you even spend it on? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Josh hesitated before listing it all. Around $6,000 on clothes and shoes, $5,000 on a trip to Vegas, including flights and hotel for him and 2 of his friends. They've always been there for me, he added, and I wanted to treat them. I stared at him. With my money? He didn't answer, just kept talking. He'd spent $800 at a luxury salon, bought a new iPhone and MacBook for around $3,000. The rest had gone to spa visits, high-end dinners, and paying off credit card debt. And then he said the words that made my stomach turn. I don't remember everything. It went fast. I looked back at my parents. Now that you know what he did and how he spent it, how is he going to pay me back? My mother gently rubbed Josh's shoulder. Well, he only works part-time. Most of his income goes toward essentials. What essentials? I snapped. He lives here rent-free. You pay for his insurance, his phone, everything. Josh muttered. That's not fair. No. I cut in. What's not fair is that I worked for every cent of that money, and he stole it. My father held up his hands. Let's all calm down. Maybe a renter's insurance covers theft. I blinked at him. You want me to commit insurance fraud? To cover up Josh's actual fraud? I'm trying to find a solution that works for everyone, he said defensively. No, I replied, my voice cold now. A solution that works is him taking responsibility and paying me back. Mom sighed heavily. Natalie, it's just money. Family is more important. Don't create a lifelong rift over this. Just money. I echoed. That was 3 years of my life. And you're asking me to throw it away, again, for the sake of family peace. Josh said quietly, You're being dramatic. I turned on him. No, Josh. I'm being an adult. Something you clearly know nothing about. Then I faced my parents. And you, congratulations. You've enabled him for so long that he's now graduated to felony theft. Great job. My dad's face hardened. You need to leave. Come back when you're willing to discuss this civilly. Civilly? I laughed. He commits a crime, and I'm the one who's out of line? Mom stepped forward. If you push this, you could destroy your relationship with your brother forever. Is that really what you want? I looked at all 3 of them. Josh's tear-streaked face, my parents' disapproval directed not at him, but at me. I felt something in my chest shift, something sharp and permanent. What I want, I said slowly, is my money back. If you can't see that, I'll find another way to get it. And then I walked out of the house. Not just physically, but emotionally. I was done being the one who always understood. The one who always gave in. The one who was expected to sacrifice for the sake of keeping the peace. That peace had cost me enough. When I got back to my apartment that evening, the silence felt different. It wasn't calm or peaceful, it was heavy. Like grief. I sat on the edge of my couch, staring at the wall as everything sank in. My savings, my dream of owning my own place, all of it was gone. But worse than the money was the realization that my family had never seen me. Not really. Not as someone worth standing up for. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I called my best friend Erin. I didn't even get through the full story before she exploded. He stole what? She shrieked through the phone. Natalie, are you serious? And your parents are siding with him? I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Pretty much. They kept talking about how he's going through something and how I should be understanding. Erin's tone hardened. No. This isn't a little sibling spat. This is grand theft. He stole from you, planned it, waited for you to leave, and took every cent. That's criminal. I know, I said, my voice flat. But he's still my brother. And that's why it's even worse, she replied. Because they're using family as a shield for him and a weapon against you. I sighed, rubbing my temples. I don't want to call the police on my own brother. But I also can't just let this go. Then don't, Erin said. Make a plan. A repayment plan. Be reasonable one last time. If they reject it, you go legal. You've already lost enough. After we hung up, I took a deep breath and got to work. I opened a spreadsheet and laid everything out. Based on Josh's part-time job, I calculated what he could realistically pay, $500 per month. I created a plan with built-in clauses. Missed payments would result in consequences. If he got a full-time job, payments would increase. The timeline would span 3 years. It was fair, far more fair than he deserved. That afternoon, I called my parents and asked for a sit-down. I wanted all 3 of them there. No more hallway confrontations or emotionally charged yelling matches. I would handle this like a professional, the way I had built every inch of my adult life. They agreed, somewhat warily, and when I arrived, they were all waiting in the living room. Josh looked miserable. My mother seemed nervous. My father, stern. I sat in the armchair across from them and placed 3 printed copies of the repayment plan on the coffee table. "Thank you for meeting with me," I began. "I've thought a lot about this, and I believe I've come up with a solution that's fair." I handed each of them a copy. "This is a structured repayment plan. Josh will pay $500 a month for 3 years. There are no added fees or interest. I've outlined consequences for missed payments and included a timeline." My father looked at the document, frowning. $500 a month? That's excessive. "It's not," I replied calmly. "It's a fraction of what most people would charge in interest. At this rate, he'll be done in 3 years. He spent the money in 5 days. Josh looked up, eyes wide. "I can't afford that." "Then get a full-time job," I said. "Or a second part-time one. You stole from me. Fix it." My mother put her arm around him. "Sweetheart, maybe we can help with some of it. Thomas, what if we contributed, say, $100 a month?" I didn't even blink. "At that rate, it would take over 16 years. Dad added, "Maybe we can stretch to 200. Still 7.5 years. Unacceptable." Josh suddenly started crying again. "I can't believe you're doing this to me. I already feel awful. You're trying to punish me for years." I turned to him, cold and clear. "I'm not doing this to you. You did this to yourself. Actions have consequences." Dad leaned forward, his voice measured. "Natalie, you're financially stable. You have a good job. Josh is in a more precarious position." "By his own choices," I replied. "I've worked for everything I have. I went without, took on extra work, skipped vacations. He took what I earned." Mom's tone sharpened. "Not everyone is like you. Josh is sensitive. He feels things more deeply. That makes life harder." There it was again. The same excuse repackaged and recycled. "Being sensitive doesn't excuse stealing," I said. "It doesn't excuse anything." Dad sighed. "We just think this plan is too harsh." I stood up, gathering the folders. What's harsh is being robbed by your own brother and told to get over it. What's harsh is your own family asking you to absorb the loss for the sake of peace. "You're being melodramatic," Mom said. I looked at all 3 of them, Josh's tears, Dad's disappointment, Mom's dismissal, and felt something inside me settle. A line had been crossed, one they couldn't uncross. "I tried to be reasonable," I said quietly, "to find a way through this as a family. But none of you understand or care about what this has done to me." "Of course we care," Dad protested. "No," I said. "You don't. If you did, you'd hold Josh accountable. Instead, you want me to just accept it." I walked to the door and turned back. "You have 24 hours to accept this plan. After that, I will explore other options." Josh's voice cracked. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, meeting his eyes, "exactly what you think it means." And then I left. No yelling. No drama. Just silence. But it was the kind of silence that comes after a decision. A silence that felt final. That night, I sat on my couch with my laptop open, my mind spinning. I knew what the other options were. I just hadn't wanted to go there. I stared at my screen, hesitant, until I finally clicked into my old college group chat and sent a message to Luke, a former classmate turned attorney. "Hey, do you have a few minutes to talk? I need some legal advice. Family related." Within 5 minutes, my phone rang. "What's going on?"
Luke asked.
I took a deep breath and told him everything. Josh stealing my card, draining my account, admitting it, and my parents defending him. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. When I finished, there was a brief silence before he spoke. "Well, Natalie, what your brother did isn't just morally wrong. It's criminal. That's credit card fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny considering the amount. He could easily be looking at felony charges." I swallowed hard. Hearing it laid out in legal terms made it feel even more real. What would that process look like? You'd file a police report, provide all your evidence, bank statements, messages, any admission of guilt. The police would investigate, likely interview your brother, and submit their findings to the district attorney. If charges are pressed, it goes to court. And with that amount involved, he could be facing jail time. I was quiet for a moment. The thought of Josh going to jail made my stomach twist, no matter how angry I was. Is there any middle ground? I asked. Something less than pressing full charges, but more than doing nothing? You could file a civil suit instead of a criminal complaint, Luke explained. That would focus on getting your money back through a court-ordered repayment. But honestly, if your brother doesn't have the assets, collecting would be tough. And if I filed a police report but didn't push for sentencing? That's possible too, he said. You can request leniency. Sometimes just filing the report is enough to scare someone straight. But Natalie, you need to decide whether you're willing to keep letting them walk all over you or not. Because right now, they don't think you'll actually do it. He was right. That's what this all came down to. They were betting on me being the one to back down, again. Thanks, Luke, I said. I'll think about it. But I already knew. The next morning, I drove to the police station in downtown Denver. The building was older, the waiting area full of people, the fluorescent lights humming above me. It took nearly an hour before I was called into a back office by Officer Moore, a woman in her late 40s with a firm handshake and kind eyes. "What brings you in today?" she asked. I explained everything calmly and clearly. She listened carefully, typing into her system while I laid out the timeline. "Do you have any documentation of the withdrawals?" she asked. I pulled out my printed bank statements and handed them over, along with screenshots of my travel itinerary and proof I'd been in San Francisco during the theft. "And the card was kept at your parents' house?" "In my old desk. I never gave my brother permission to use it." Officer Moore nodded. "Do you believe your brother is the one who accessed the card?" "I know he did," I said. "He admitted it. And my parents heard him admit it, too." She leaned back in her chair. "Just to be clear, filing a false police report is a crime. Once this is filed, the investigation proceeds. Are you sure you want to move forward?" I looked her in the eye.
"Yes."
"I'm sure." She handed me a printed copy of my statement and asked me to sign. I picked up the pen, my hand only trembling slightly, and signed my name. It was done. Later that evening, I was scrolling through my phone when I decided, out of morbid curiosity, to check Josh's Instagram. I rarely looked at his page, but something told me I needed to. And there it was. Photo after photo, from Vegas. Josh with his arms around friends in a VIP booth. Designer shopping bags littered across a hotel bed. Champagne flutes, room service spreads, laughing selfies at poolside lounges. And the captions? Treating myself because I deserve it. Winning big and living larger. Best weekend ever. #blessed. I took screenshots of everything. The timeline matched the dates of the withdrawals. Any shred of doubt gone. The next day, my phone rang. It was Josh. "What the hell, Natalie?" he said, his voice frantic. "The cops came to the house. They were asking questions about me. Did you really file a report?" "I did," I said evenly. "You can't do this to me," he shouted. "They said I could go to jail." "I'm aware," I said, not reacting. "You had your chance. I gave you a repayment plan. You said it was too much." His voice dropped. Okay. I'll do it. I'll pay you back. I'll sign the plan. Just please call them. Tell them it was a mistake." Before I could respond, I heard my father in the background. Then he took the phone. "Natalie, this has gone too far," he said, his voice hard. "Do you realize what you've done to your own brother? The police say this could be a felony. I know, I said. It's called consequences. How could you be so vindictive? Your mother is beside herself. Is this what you wanted? To tear this family apart? No, I replied. What I wanted was my money back. What I wanted was to be treated fairly. What I wanted was for Josh to be held accountable. Well, he said bitterly, you've made your point. I hope you're satisfied. He hung up. The phone rang again immediately. This time it was my mother. She was crying, yelling, begging, saying I was heartless, that I was destroying everything. For a brief second, I felt a flicker of guilt. But then I remembered the photos. The praise he got for crayon cards. The time he stole $30 from me and I was told to let it go. The years of being the one who had to be strong while he was protected from reality. No more. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect. And I was finally demanding mine. After the calls from my parents and Josh, I turned off my phone. I needed space. I needed quiet. For the first time in my life, I had drawn a hard line, and now I was standing on the other side of it. I felt shaken, but steady. I knew I couldn't back down, not again. If I did, nothing would change. Josh would keep taking, my parents would keep enabling, and I'd keep being the one expected to sacrifice for the sake of family. The next morning, I scheduled a meeting at a quiet coffee shop downtown, a place neutral to all of us, with plenty of tables and enough space to talk in private. I arrived early, taking a seat in the corner with my laptop bag and a manila folder that held everything: the bank statements, printed screenshots of Josh's Vegas trip, and a new, legally binding repayment agreement that Luke had helped me draft. They showed up 10 minutes late. My parents looked tired, worn down by the tension. My mom's eyes were red-rimmed, and my dad's shirt was wrinkled, something I had never seen before. Josh walked behind them, his head down, his shoulders slumped. The confident swagger I'd grown up resenting was gone. "Thank you for coming," I said formally as they sat down. Like we had a choice, my dad muttered, but my mom gave him a sharp look, and he stayed quiet. "Natalie," she said gently, "we're here to talk about how we can resolve this, as a family. This whole police thing is too much. Please tell us we can find another way." I looked at each of them calmly. I've given this a lot of thought, and I've laid out 3 clear paths forward. I pulled out 3 papers and laid them on the table in front of them. Option 1. Josh returns to the police station, gives a full confession, and I request the court mandate a minimum sentence with mandatory restitution. Josh visibly paled, but I continued. Option 2. Josh signs this legally binding repayment agreement. He'll pay $750 a month, and if he defaults, I'll pursue wage garnishment or asset seizure. I've increased the amount because of the added legal costs and interest he would have paid in any other setting. My father looked shocked. $750? He can't afford that. He can if he gets a full-time job, I said. If he sells the luxury items he bought with my money. If he takes responsibility for what he did. And option 3? My mother asked quietly. I proceed with full charges. No leniency. No deal. The legal system decides his punishment. My father slammed his hand on the table. This is blackmail. No, I said firmly. This is accountability. My mother leaned forward. Natalie, please. $750 a month is impossible. It's not, I said. He could easily make that work if he made even half the sacrifices I did while saving that money. He wanted to live large with my funds. Now he can downsize to make it right. Josh finally looked up. You're enjoying this, aren't you? He said bitterly. Seeing me suffer. You've always been jealous. I blinked. Jealous. Of how much mom and dad love me. Of how they pay attention to me. That's what this is about, isn't it? For a moment, I almost laughed. But instead, I calmly took my phone from my folder, unlocked it, and played a recording. Josh's voice filled the air between us. I just needed a break, okay? Everyone always talks about how great Natalie is, how responsible. Why can't you be more like her? Do you know how that feels? Then my voice. So, you stole $20,000 because you're jealous of me? The recording stopped. I looked up. All three of them were silent. I recorded our confrontation, I said. You can't twist this. You all heard him admit it. And I have a timeline, evidence, and now this recording to show the motive. My father stiffened. Recording someone without their consent is illegal. In Colorado, it's a one-party consent state, I replied calmly. So yes, I can record a conversation I'm part of. It wouldn't be admissible in court, but it's a reminder of the truth for us. Then I pulled out another document. This lists previous incidents. The time Josh stole $30 from me when I was 16. The birthday money Grandma gave me that disappeared. The prom fund that went missing. I let those go. For peace. But that ends now. My parents exchanged a long, weary look. What do you want from us, Natalie? My mother asked. I want my money back. All of it. And I want Josh to finally be held responsible. No more excuses. No more shielding him. My father cleared his throat. If we could help him meet the $500 a month from your original plan, would you consider dropping the charges? I paused. That agreement also required him to find full-time work within 3 months and sell all luxury items purchased with my money. And it must be legally binding. We understand, my mother said, her voice cautious. I looked at Josh. His eyes were red, his expression hollow. Fine, he mumbled. I'll pay it. I'll get a job. I'll sell the stuff. Just don't let me go to jail. And then, unexpectedly, his voice broke. There's something else I need to say. We all looked at him. The money, I didn't spend all of it on stuff. I owed people money. Bad people. My mother gasped. What are you talking about? Josh lowered his head. I've been gambling. Online. For over a year. I got in too deep. I borrowed from people. Loan sharks. They started threatening me. I used Natalie's money to pay them off. The coffee shop seemed to freeze around us. For the first time, my father looked truly shaken. Why didn't you come to us? He asked. Josh's voice was small. Because I didn't want to disappoint you. You always treated me like I was special, like I wasn't supposed to struggle. And I was terrified you'd finally see me for what I really am. My mother began to cry. We had no idea. No, I said softly. You didn't. Because you were too busy protecting him from consequences. Too busy expecting me to be the one who always bends. My father turned to me. Natalie, we owe you an apology. For all of it. For the way we've treated you over the years. For the double standard. We were wrong. My mother nodded, through her tears. We should have seen this coming. We let it happen. I nodded slowly. It wasn't a full repair, not yet. But it was something. I'll accept the original $500 monthly plan, I said. With the conditions. And I want proof that Josh is getting help for his gambling. You'll have it, my father said. No more excuses. Josh looked at me, and for the first time in years, his expression wasn't smug or fake or manipulative. It was sincere. I'll pay you back, Natalie. Every penny. And I'll get help. I promise. For the first time, I believed him just a little. After that meeting at the coffee shop, something finally shifted. For the first time, I felt like my family was actually listening, really listening, not just reacting. We left together, not exactly united, but not fractured either. When we arrived at my apartment, Josh signed the legally binding repayment agreement that Luke had drafted. The terms were clear and non-negotiable. $500 per month, no missed payments without penalties, immediate sale of luxury goods purchased with my money, proof of full-time job hunting, and documented enrollment in a gambling addiction support program. To my surprise, Josh immediately handed over his designer backpack, a pair of expensive sneakers, and a couple of clothing items that still had tags on them. I'll bring the rest tomorrow, he said quietly. And I already looked up a local Gamblers Anonymous group. They meet Tuesday evenings, not far from here. I nodded, still wary but cautiously optimistic. My father then handed me a personal check for $1,000. This is from your mother and me, he said. Not to excuse anything Josh did, but to show we're serious about helping fix this. I accepted it, but I kept my emotions in check. I'd been hurt too many times before to believe things had truly changed overnight. Still, this time felt different. Not perfect, but different. As they prepared to leave, my dad lingered behind while my mom and Josh went down to the car. He looked hesitant, uncomfortable, like he wasn't sure how to start. "Natalie," he said finally, "do you mind if we talk for a moment?" I nodded and motioned for him to sit. We sat together on my small couch, the air between us heavy with unspoken words. "I owe you an apology," he began, his voice low and steady. "Not just for this past week, but for a lot more than that. Your mother and I always saw you as the strong one, the responsible one. You didn't need as much from us, or so we thought. Josh, he always seemed so fragile. We gave him more attention, more grace, more excuses, thinking we were helping him. But now I see we weren't helping anyone, least of all you." I stayed quiet, letting his words sink in. I had waited my entire life for this kind of acknowledgement. Not because I needed validation, but because it meant they were finally seeing what I had carried for so long. "I'm a school principal," he continued. "I should have known better than to create such a lopsided dynamic between my kids.
We were wrong, Natalie.
And I'm sorry." "Thank you," I said softly. "That means more than you know." He nodded, and before leaving, he added, "We're going to do better. All of us." In the weeks that followed, change did start to happen. Slowly, cautiously, but it was real. Josh returned or sold most of the items he'd bought, and I recovered about $4,000 right away. He kept his word and got a full-time job as an administrative assistant for a small business. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady work, and for the first time, he was taking it seriously. Every month, like clockwork, I received a payment from him. Sometimes it came with a short text, "Send it," sometimes nothing. But it came. And each time, I deposited it without comment. This wasn't about praise. It was about responsibility. My mother, who had always unconsciously favored Josh, also started changing. She began calling me regularly, not to ask for help or to talk about Josh, but just to see how I was doing. She even came to visit me one Saturday afternoon with pastries from the bakery and a warm hug I hadn't expected. And when Josh complained about how strict the repayment plan was, because of course he did, my mom gently reminded him, "You created this, honey. Now you fix it." 3 months after our agreement, my parents suggested family therapy. I was hesitant at first. Part of me wanted to move on and keep things surface level, but I agreed, because if we were going to have a real chance at rebuilding, we had to confront the past. The therapy sessions were hard. Brutally honest. There were tears, tense silences, and more than a few difficult admissions. I spoke openly about how it had felt to grow up invisible. To be the one who got overlooked, who was expected to be the strong one, the forgiving one. My mother cried as she listened, finally understanding the hurt I had carried silently for decades. Josh, too, began to open up. He talked about how the pressure of being special had made him feel like he wasn't allowed to fail, like he had to hide everything, including his addiction. Gambling had started as a thrill, something exciting, a little rebellious. But it quickly became his escape. It numbed him, made him feel powerful, until it didn't. 6 months after the theft, Josh had repaid nearly half of what he owed. He hadn't missed a single payment, and he continued attending Gamblers Anonymous twice a week. His job was going well, and while we didn't suddenly become best friends, there was a mutual respect growing between us. Fragile, yes, but real. One evening, after another therapy session, Josh and I walked out together. He glanced over at me as we reached the parking lot. "I never thanked you," he said. "For what?" I asked. "For not giving up on me," he replied. "You could have pressed charges and walked away from all of us. And honestly, I think that's what I deserved." I looked at him for a long moment. "I didn't do it for you. I did it for me. Because I needed to stand up for myself for once." He nodded. "I get that now. And I'm trying to build some of those boundaries for myself too." The therapist said I never really learned how. "Better late than never," I said with a small smile. For the first time, it didn't feel forced. It felt hopeful. And maybe that was the biggest one of all. Not the money. not the condo, but the fact that I had reclaimed something far more valuable, my voice, my place in this family, and the power to say, finally and clearly, enough. A full year passed. 12 months of rebuilding. 12 months of progress, stumbles, awkward family dinners, heartfelt apologies, and peace. Not perfection, but peace. Josh completed his repayment. Every dollar. All $20,000. His final payment came with a handwritten note. I'll never be able to repay the trust one broke, but I hope this is a start. Thank you for believing I could do better, even when I didn't. It was the first time I'd seen his handwriting since we were teenagers, and it brought tears to my eyes. By that time, I was settled into my new life. My condo in Denver felt like mine now, warm, quiet, safe. I had redecorated the small living room with soft green accents and filled my bookshelf with novels I never had time to read before. My job, now in business analytics instead of accounting, was fulfilling in a way I hadn't expected. Numbers were still involved, but now I was helping organizations make smart decisions, not just balancing ledgers. Aaron, my best friend since college, visited often. We drank wine, laughed about old classmates, and talked about how strange and beautiful life could be. You've changed, she said once. Not in a bad way, just you're lighter now. Like you finally exhaled. Maybe I had. My parents, too, were changing in their own ways. My mother no longer asked me to smooth things over. My father respected my boundaries. They apologized when they were wrong, and that alone felt like a small miracle. Therapy had cracked open years of tension, and while the wounds were still healing, we were finally on the same side. I even reconnected with extended family I hadn't spoken to in years, cousins, an aunt who used to send birthday cards. Turns out, some of them had always suspected the imbalance in how I was treated. They just didn't know how to speak up. Now they did. And I didn't feel so alone anymore. The biggest surprise came the following spring, at our first real family gathering since everything happened. Josh arrived late, a casserole dish in his hands, and a grin on his face. He looked healthier, more grounded. He chatted with relatives, offered to help with dishes, and when someone brought up old stories, he laughed without bitterness. Later that night, after most of the guests had left, he pulled me aside. I got a promotion, he said, and a raise. And I'm helping with a community outreach group for young guys struggling with addiction. That's amazing, I said, genuinely proud of him. He smiled, a little sheepishly. I know it doesn't fix everything, but I'm trying, Natalie. I really am. I know, I said, and I see it. He hesitated. Would you ever be open to, I don't know, being close again? Not just civil, but actual siblings? I thought about all we'd been through. The years of pain, the betrayal, the slow, painful climb back to this place. And I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't holding on to the hurt. Not because I'd forgotten, but because I'd healed. I think we're already on our way, I said. We hugged. It wasn't dramatic or tearful. Just quiet.
Steady. Real.
That night, as I lay in bed, I looked around my room, the soft lamplight, the city skyline outside my window, the quiet hum of a space that was finally mine. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who stayed silent to keep the peace, the one who watched her brother be protected while she was pushed aside, the one who worked harder, gave more, accepted less, because that's what was expected. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who stood up, who drew a line, who demanded to be seen and heard and respected. And the best part? I didn't just get my money back. I got my power back. My voice. My worth. And that's something no one can ever steal again. If you found my story moving, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful real-life stories like this. Every share helps someone else find the strength to speak up, to set boundaries, and to take their life back. This is Natalie's story, but it might be yours too. Stay strong. Stay heard. And always remember, you matter.